All right, welcome back. Ask Coach Nate, episode 28. Today, we're going to talk about how to race your first criterium. So now with racing coming back, I know there's a lot of people out there who are new to bicycles during the pandemic. There's been a lot of interest in riding. And perhaps you're one of those people who, you've gotten into riding and you used to race, or you want to check out racing, and a criterium is a great way to get started. So Nate, why don't we first just help people understand, if they don't know what a bicycle racing criterium is, explain the format, and then we can talk about some tips and how to manage your first experience with one.
Yeah, so criterium is just a type of circuit race that's quite common in the US and Australia predominantly. I think they have some elsewhere, but for the most part, like in Europe, all the stuff that you see on the tour and on TV is all road racing. But usually in the US, it's going to be anywhere from like 3/4 of a mile to 1.5 miles loop, usually in a downtown area or an office park somewhere where they can get, permits to close off the roads. And so usually the roads are totally closed off, and it's going to be like a giant rectangle or an L-shaped, loop of roads that you just do a bunch of laps for the duration of the crit. And usually it's done entirely by time. And so it might be like 30 or 40 minutes for the Cat 5 race. It might be 75 or 90 minutes for the pro race. And you just ride for time. And, it doesn't matter how fast you're going or how many miles you do. It's just entirely, you race for an hour. And then when the hour's up, you go for it. Usually the officials will have a lap counter. And so when it's like based on the lap times, they're anticipating what's going to be the right finishing time. So they'll start counting down at like 5 to go at the start and finish. You'll see the lap card counter, but it's just done by time. And I don't know, it's pretty straightforward. It's because it's short, it's relatively intense compared to road racing, which can be, 3, 4, 5 times as long as crit racing.
Yeah. I've heard it described as NASCAR for bicycles. And it tends to be a lot more popular in the United States. I have seen these criteriums in Europe, but they won't do the format the way that we do it, where it's 45 minutes to an hour. They'll do like 100 kilometers just in like one circuit or something.
Yeah, but it's usually like a much longer circuit. And so it is actually like a circuit race. It's what we would regard as a circuit race, which is ironic because criterium literally just means circuit race if you translate it. But it has a certain meaning in the English speaking world in the US and in Australia.
Yeah, they don't, I haven't seen in Europe the four corners like downtown, like literally going through Foursquare.
Yeah, the closest thing you have is maybe just like the finishing circuit of a road race. So they do like 100 miles and then they go by like the Champs-Élysées or something like that. And even that is pretty long for a crit, just the loop that they do at the end.
Yeah, and I like the format. I did really well in criterium racing. I thought it was fun. It's exciting. It's aggressive. And they have them all over the place, right? Because they're easy to set up. They don't take a lot of effort. Where like a road race they're pretty difficult to go and shut down a bunch of roads or find roads that are low traffic so that people can race bicycles on them. And so obviously that's one of the reasons that criteriums have proliferated across the United States. All right, so we've defined the format. And so what should people do to prepare for their first criterium?
So, yeah, I mean, one thing that is appealing aside from just the logistics of crit racing is that they're relatively short. So a lot of people who don't have a ton of time to train can be fit enough to like have fun and feel like they're, very competitive at crit racing because they can train like 6 or 7 hours a week maybe and be quite competitive. But in general, yeah, like you want to be relatively well trained. You want to be very comfortable riding in a pack on group rides, or maybe you have a race ride near you, and it's great to practice that. So you have good like basic bike handling skills and you know how to read kind of the movement of the group that you're with. It's definitely, because it is short and relatively intense and can be fast and can include a lot of tight corners with a lot of other riders. You really shouldn't just be like, oh, I've been riding for 3 months. This is fun. I'll sign up for a crit and just show up without having any idea what that looks like. At the very least, like get used to riding in a group with some riding partners or with a faster group ride or a race ride. But assuming that you have basic, fitness and basic bike handling skills that are sufficient to like have confidence going to a crit, I would just like look at the calendar, find some crits that look good for you that are, going to work for your schedule, and just sign up and plan to go. But from whatever your date is that you want to race, just backtrack a few days and plan out like a few days easy for your training so you're not tired going into it. And then have a plan for race day about like how you're going to get there, how you're going to warm up, how you're going to allow time to like pick up your number and have enough time to warm up and line up before the race starts. And then sometimes for people that are in the middle categories, sometimes they'll have the opportunity to do multiple fields, like participate in multiple fields throughout the day, which is definitely one thing that's appealing about crit racing, is that you can potentially get in a lot of racing over a short period of time, because you might be able to do like 1 or 2 crits in a weekend and do 2 fields in each of those perhaps. So like maybe there's a crit on Saturday and you're in like the 45 plus 4-5 race and the open 4-5 race, for example. And you could even do that, back to back on the weekend if you wanted to. But you want to narrow it down to like specific things, because I feel like there's a million different types of preparations that can go into it. Like there's kind of your training, which is like, weeks and months out. There's basic skills like showing up for group rides. And then there's like just literally like the day of like getting ready to go and showing up for the race. And then there's like the race itself and all of those things. I don't know, there's like a lot of layers there.
Yeah. I think if you're new to this, I would say like, just give it a go, right? Like you need to have some skill and some talent. And if you're considering racing, then I think you think you're good enough to do that. I mean, we ride bikes enough and with other people that it's pretty clear to me that people you talk to, they seem to have a pretty good sense of their ability. I don't meet too many people who ride a lot and have a delusion that they're going to be great at racing if they're terrible at handling their bike. I don't know. I guess like it's funny. I was just thinking about this through. Like, actually, I've never come across that person who's like horrendous at riding their bikes. Like, I'm going to go and race because I'm so great. Like, I think because like they are high risk, right? There are crashes, or you're going through corners and you're going really tight, and you might strike a pedal. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and I think the reality of that is actually what prevents people from doing it who probably could manage it. So I would actually suggest that people think outside the box or be really open to it, that you're probably good enough to do it if you're considering racing.
Yeah.
But bike handling is a big part of it. In fact, that's what I liked about it. I would say 50% of it perhaps is handling. The other 50% is fitness. And then the thing I would say is like, if you've never done a race, like the first one I ever did, just be prepared to get dropped. That's just part of what happens. Actually, I'm curious to hear, Nate, about you and your first Criterium experience.
So my first crit race was actually accidental, because I planned on doing a road race and I just had the day wrong. So I showed up at the place where the road race was going to be held, which was the next day on Sunday. But I was there on Saturday and I was like, oh no, like I made an error in the schedule. I don't even know how I did that, but this is, younger Nate. So I called the promoter and asked them if I realized that, the crit was happening and not the road race. So I called the promoter and was like, oh, like, do you still have room in the Cat 5 race? Because I was obviously a Cat 5 at that point. That was my first ever bike race. Luckily, I had done, rides with riding partners and some small group rides. I hadn't really done any race riding successfully. The only time that I had known about a race ride near me that I tried to join was when I was in high school, and I was a skinny runner and I had no power on the bike. So I just got dropped like flat out. I couldn't hang with them. But anyway, which is ironic though, because like that's the same course as the San Dimas Stage Race circuit race, which is a race that I've done fairly well at in like the pro field, many years later. But like showing up for the Wednesday night group ride, I just got flat out dropped. I couldn't even catch on. Anyway, so I call the promoter. I drive like the 5 or 10 miles across from, the farm country to the downtown area, find the race, sign up and do it. And my thought was that I wanted to play it safe, and I was not confident about my ability to be at all good at sprinting. So I was actually aggressive throughout the middle of the race. And at the time, I think I underestimated my fitness relative to other people's fitness. Like I knew that I was fit, but I didn't know how fit other Cat 4 and 5 racers would be. So I assumed that people would be able to catch me. So I attacked a few times and was like off the front alone or off the front with some other riders a few times throughout the race. But when it came down to like 2 or 3 laps to go, I just went to the back and basically sat up on the finishing lap just to make sure that I was not anywhere, close to any possible crashing, because, the top 5 or 10 riders are going to sprint it out in the last straightaway. So I wanted to avoid being right on their wheel if one of them went down. So anyway, I finished safe and sound. I had a lot of fun, learning how the field would move together, and then went at it the next day at the road race, which was a flat, breezy road race in the farm country in Central California, and got in a break with like 5 or 6 other riders, and I don't know, had a good time doing that.
I guess so. Let me think about this. If you're Cat 5 and you haven't done a lot of criteriums, actually it gets pretty simple to break down a few of the things that are important to understand. So if you're racing Cat 5, all you need to do is cross the line to get the points. There's no points for first place, second place, third place, like there is in Cat 4 and Cat 3 up. If you're Cat 5 and you want to upgrade to Category 4, all you need to do is finish like 10 of these races. You need 10 points. You need to finish 10 races. So that's important, actually, I think, to know if you're in Cat 5. That's all you need to do, because you want to be smart. You don't want to get hurt. Like that is something that can happen and does happen, particularly in Category 5 races where you're with a lot of people who are inexperienced. They're not comfortable with racing. It's very new to them. And so I would tell anybody, if you're serious about this, is like, be aware of that, be smart, like don't be overly aggressive. There's no need to like go all out and take a lot of risks and win the race. If you feel comfortable and having a good time and the field is a bunch of people who you feel confident and comfortable with, which will usually emerge, then yeah, absolutely go for it, right? But be aware that all you need to do is cross the line to get the points, right? So there's no reason to like take unnecessary risks, I think is the way that I like to put it. And so once you're comfortable at that, you can, kind of like test yourself and push a little bit further. And I think what I found was like, as you advance, you just want to ride at the front, so all the crashes happen behind you.
Yeah, I think if you're new to it, you just want to make sure that you hold a mostly pretty steady line. And you don't do any sudden things that could crash anyone else out that's, behind you or adjacent to you, or you're not aware that they're there, and you like swipe their handlebar or swipe their front wheel. Likewise, you want to protect and give your front wheel some margin of error so that somebody in front of you doesn't like stand up to accelerate and you're overlapping wheels and then they like tap your front wheel and you go down. So as long as you have a little bit of a buffer around your front wheel, and as long as you're mostly keeping smooth lines, try to learn how the group moves, try to learn the good lines, and just move with the field, get a good workout, have fun, attack if you want to, try to ride the brake if you want to, or just sit in and like look for an opportunity to sprint at the end if you feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, like Gregory says, like early on, it doesn't necessarily matter if you finish first or 21st. It just matters that you're safe and that you're learning how to do it better, so that when you are like a Cat 4 or Cat 3 or a Cat 2 and you're trying to get points and you're trying to be on the podium, that you have like the basic skills needed to do that. And obviously over that span of time, you're probably like training and getting fitter and stronger, so that hopefully if that's something you aspire to, you have the fitness and skill set that you can go after good results.
And then cornering is the piece to really be aware of in criteriums. So that's where things can happen, because people are pretty comfortable riding in this pack and everyone doesn't really fully know what they're doing. But then as you come into the corner, like there's a tendency to do a couple of different things. So certain people will slow down, which will slow down people behind you. And so there's a bit of a slingshot effect, which then people will try to either go around, and that's where it can be really chaotic. So you have to have like a plan and be very smart about how you handle the corners. I think in like a Cat 5, like an early category race, your first race, I'd recommend trying to stay on the outside, because the worst part is if you're on the inside and you have the curb to your right, and somebody on the outside of you just doesn't take the line correctly. They cut you off. They're not handling their bike well, and they either force you into the curb or force you into them, right? So that would be like my take on it, is just be careful about riding on the inside and be aware about riding on the inside. And as the race progresses, and depending on your fitness level, if you're feeling strong and you're at the front, you might actually take that inside line, because you'll find that that's more efficient. It'll get you further ahead. And if you can get good at it, that's a great place to be. But I think it's important to understand the dynamics of all of that and be really aware, because that's where a lot of the issues can come up.
Yeah. And as you get more experienced, like I think any race, when you go into it, it's good to read the course and read how people take the turns like early on, just so it's safe and you can get through the race effectively. Later on, once you're like trying to get good results, or you're trying to like ride it efficiently, like a lot of times I wouldn't be trying to get a good result at a crit, but I had to get through it because it's a part of a stage race. And so I just like wanted to finish in the field and spend as little effort as possible doing it. And it's like, depending on the course, depending on like where there might be like rough spots of pavement or really sharp turns, or like potholes, and like there's a variety of things that can make it so that one side or the other of the field is more efficient, easier to maintain your speed, easier to move up. And a lot of times that is the outside line, but it's not always. And sometimes it will depend on the course and what road features there are. But sometimes if you can just like read where the good lines are, you can just be like, I like the right side of the field. I'm going to mostly be hovering, towards the front on the right side of the field, because I know the left side has like this and that pothole, and I don't want to have to deal with that. Or people like get caught up on this one pinch, like left turn. So I hate the left side of the field. But on another course that maybe looks similar on paper, when you actually ride it, you might find that it's different, and you might find that the left side is actually much smoother. And like little things like that can make a big difference as you're getting more skilled, and you're confident that you're safe, you're confident you're fit enough to be in the field. But then like learning those nuances about where to position yourself and where to spend your effort and attention is really pretty impactful as far as like the results that you can get.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you recommend for someone's nutrition for doing a couple of criteriums?
Yeah. So, I mean, that, and also just like taking a little bit of your earlier question, like I would think about when you are racing and when you want to get there, and think about like, if you want to have breakfast, what you want to have for breakfast, how far that is out from when you're going to be racing. Like if you're racing first thing in the morning, because like your field starts at like 8 maybe, and you wake up at 6, you get going on the road at 6:30, you get there at 7, you get your number, you warm up. Like you might not need to have much of anything beforehand. Like if you want to have a small breakfast, that's fine. If you wanted to have like next to nothing, that's fine. When you're warming up and when you're racing, I would probably have some drink mix so that you are staying hydrated and you're also taking a little bit of fuel. Crits are short enough that you're not going to exhaust your glycogen stores. So if you're relatively fresh going into it, it's not like a road race where you need to be having like 200 or 300 calories per hour. And even for hydration, it's not like you're going to get epically dehydrated over the course of 45 or 60 or 75 minutes, unless it's, 100 degrees in the summertime, perhaps. So I would probably just warm up with some drink mix and then have a fresh bottle of drink mix at the start of the race, so that as you're riding, as you get thirsty, or if you want to feel like you're taking in calories, you can just go through a bottle. Some people like taking a gel right before the start of the race, but that's probably about all that I would plan for. If you are in one of the higher categories and you're doing like 60, 75, or 90 minutes, let's say, then you might have 1 or 2 gels on board, or you might start with a couple of bottles and have a couple hundred calories per bottle so that you can actually take in some calories. Because if you are at that point where you're racing in the Pro 1-2 field for an hour 15, hour and a half, you can burn a lot of calories in that period of time. It's not enough to exhaust your glycogen stores, but it is helpful to have some calories coming in if you're really trying to be fresh and go hard at the end of the race.
Yeah, I never found like nutrition or hydration was a big consideration for crit racing for me. Like I used to bring water bottles, and I remember like I don't think I ever even drank water during the race. Like they're 45 minutes, hour, and I was just racing, which is what I enjoyed. And it and it was really fun. They tend to be in the morning too, so it's not very hot. So I didn't really feel like I needed a lot of water, but I definitely was thirsty when I was done.
Yeah, I think it depends. So if it's dry out and you are going to get like cotton mouth, it's nice to at least be able to wet your mouth. If you are pretty comfortable in the field and you're relaxed, hopefully at some point, you know, especially after the first few laps where it's more excited and before the last few laps when people are setting up for the sprint, hopefully in the middle you're relaxed enough that you could, you know, take some fluids if you wanted to. And not everyone will drink stuff, but like, especially if you know that you get a dry mouth or if you know that you get thirsty, it's good to have stuff so that you can just stay relaxed and stay comfortable and, you know, stay hydrated, but also just like feel like you're taking care of your body. Because it sucks if you're, you know, 40 minutes into an hour-long crit and your mouth is dry and you're distressed because you like wish you could be drinking, but you don't have a bottle with you, for example. But yeah, it is quite common that you might not, you barely touch it if it's cool out and your race is not that long. But it is good also to make sure that you have some recovery snack afterward. I feel like any kind of racing, that's one of the biggest errors that a lot of people make, and a big opportunity to like improve their fitness and improve their training quality is that if you're training from home and you get home, sure, you can like hop in the shower, you can have a snack like right away. But if you are an hour or two away from home and you finish a race, you're probably going to like hang out and talk with your friends. You're going to like go maybe to pick up, you know, your prize, whatever it is, if you were in the top 5 or whatever, and there's some sort of prize that you got, like, I don't know, a bottle of lube or some tires or like a little bit of prize money. But it's like, it could be an hour potentially or longer before you leave the race. And it could be another hour or more before you get home. And a lot of people, like, they just, you know, have a bottle of mix and a bar and call it good. But if it's like pretty intense and it's more than 45 minutes, I would have a bottle of recovery shake and maybe like a sandwich so that you can have that before you get home.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like, you know, hanging out, like talking to people and watching the races. Usually a bunch that go on. Because I think that would be my final piece of advice for criterium racing is like, have fun and make friends with the people that you're racing with. Typically, they'll be the same people that you see at races. They'll be the people that move up with you in the categories. And, you know, if we're talking about like masters racing or just kind of amateur racing, it's just for fun. And so people can sometimes, I think, get too serious and too aggressive. And those are the people that no one likes, right? You want to have a good time. You want to be smart. You want to be safe. You want to be fit. You want to be strong. You want to win. That's all excellent. And everybody there respects that, right? But there's some people who just go a little bit too far and they just take risks that don't make any sense, right? And nobody likes that person. So be smart, be polite, be nice, and race well, and people will respect you. And you know, it's just like almost like not that I've been in the real peloton, but I can only imagine like in the pros, right? Like even though there's different teams, they all have to ride together, and they all have families, and they have jobs and careers, and so nobody wants them to take an unnecessary risk. And the peloton has its own kind of collective consciousness that'll decide what is an unnecessary risk and what's not. And I would recommend always try to be within that realm that the peloton determines is appropriate for what people are doing. And hey, like if you do make a mistake or whatever, which I've done, everyone's done, that's okay too. Just admit it and tell everyone like, hey, you know, I'm sorry I caused that crash. I learned my lesson. I'll try to do better next time. Cause like that stuff does happen. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that part, but I think like it's really important to try to like understand the dynamic of like bicycle racing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of layers there. Definitely from like a safety standpoint, it's really good to not take unnecessary risks for obvious reasons, but also just like the attitude and the mentality. I think it's really funny because like that's something that I've experienced a lot. There's some people that just take it like way too seriously, and like maybe they do great. Maybe they're really excellent athletes and maybe they end up racing professionally or what have you, but some people just take it a little bit too seriously. And it's like, it's more fun for you and for everyone else if you kind of recognize like the value that it has in your life and in life generally. And even if you are a really high level athlete, I feel like one mistake that a lot of people make is they equate like they conflate maybe like their ego and their sense of self with their racing performances and their fitness. So like their Strava KOMs or their race results are somehow tied with like their worth as an athlete. And it's kind of funny because I feel like being somebody that has like, I don't want to project onto other people or like criticize other people's like way of being. Like we can all be different and that's fine. But at least for me, it's like, I have a lot of KOMs. I've won a bunch of races. I've also lost like so many more races than I've won. And some years, like I thought it was a great success because I won 2 races and they were races that I really wanted to win. And all the other races, I was mostly working to help my team. And like, that was fine, you know, but it's like, it's good to know like what it is that you're capable of doing and to not be too invested in like any one race. Cause it's like, if you get into racing, you could do 10 or 20 or 30 races in a year and just try to learn from all of them and give yourself the chance to do well, but not get too caught up in that exact moment and think that everything rides on whether or not you like make something happen that day. It's like, if you're just there and you keep on putting in the work, like you'll get opportunities. Most of the time it's not going to work out. Sometimes it is. If you're fit and strong and smart and you have a good attitude, like people are going to respect that and you're going to get results. I feel like when you take it too seriously, it just like diminishes the experience for you and for other people. It's
Yeah,
good to just
I
have
totally
fun.
agree. Like it's amateur racing. Like it's supposed to be fun, and everyone's out there, and everyone knows that they're taking a risk, and it's okay. We all agree to that. We all try to do the best that we can, and so that's fine. And we're all on the same page about that. But there's some people who like, for whatever reason, like they're outside of the norm for that race. And the reason I bring this up is because like every race has its own norms too. As you move further up in the categories, people take more risks, they're more aggressive. And that's just kind of like how it goes. But I think it's important to understand that dynamic. And that's what makes, I think, cycling such an incredible sport, is that like all these people are competing, also need to work together in a way that doesn't exist in other sports, right? Usually you have a team and you're face off with another team and that's it. But cycling has this really unique dynamic where everyone in the peloton works together, but we're also in competition. And so there's a really special culture to it that I think is just fantastic. And one of the things that I loved about racing, and I met a lot of great people in racing, and it's just been something that I love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I love that experience of like, for example, being in a break where you're racing with the people, but also against them. Because like you want the break to succeed, but then at the end, like you want to be the one crossing the line first, hopefully.
It's fantastic, right? Like there's no other sport that has that dynamic. And
yeah,
that's one of the things that makes it really special. And that's why like the politics of it, or like what's happening in the peloton are a big part of the sport. And so being aware of that is important, right? Like just like the bike handling, the fitness, the politics, the nutrition, there's so many dimensions to it. And it's just one of the things that I just love about cycling. Wait, any final tips for people on their first crit?
That's good for this one.
Yeah, excellent. I say just get out there and do it. Racing's coming back. Super excited about that. Well, excellent. Hey, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back here next week. Take care.
Bye.